Hey friends, today I want to talk to you about one thing that causes us a lot of problems in our lives, both for ourselves and in our relationships. I want to talk to you about what that thing is, as well as how we can help mitigate it in order to experience less angst, anxiety, and conflict, and help us live more in alignment with who we want to be. Let's dive into today's show. Hi, friend. Welcome to the Mental Health Coach Podcast. Do you struggle to feel as present and joyful as you'd like to in this season of life? Are you feeling overwhelmed with juggling so much between work, worrying about your kids, and managing all the things? Hi, I'm Jen Alley. I'm a mom, a wife, and a licensed professional counselor. I know that even good lives come with challenges. Parenting struggles, loneliness, marriage problems, trauma, addiction, and financial stress, just to name a few. I have been guilty of trying to get through the hard times alone and presenting a polished exterior while struggling on the inside. In this podcast, I will share brain science, intentional practices, and real-life stories to help you better understand yourself and improve your connection with others. Think of me as your friendly mental health coach. The same way that you turn to a personal trainer for your physical health, I'm here to teach you important emotional and relational skills to help guide you through life's challenges. As a reminder, this podcast is not therapy, but it is a great adjunct to therapy. So if you're ready for some coaching and support as you navigate your life with less overwhelm and more joy, I'm ready to walk beside you. Throw on your tennies, pop in your earbuds, and let's walk and talk. I wanted to jump in and tell you about a new community I am just beginning to build on Facebook. This group will be a safe, private space for podcast listeners to ask questions, get access to extra resources, and build community with others wanting to learn more about mental health, wellness, and healthy relationships. Life is so much better when done in relationship with others. See the show notes wherever you are listening to this episode to find the direct link to join the group. Also, become an insider and get weekly emails from me with mental health tips and resources delivered straight to your inbox. When I create new resources or offer sales, you'll be the first to know. Hey guys, welcome back to the Mental Health Coach Podcast. This is your host, Jen Alley, and we are going to talk about this thing that causes us so many problems. And that is that because humans are meaning-making machines, we are constantly creating narratives or stories. And we're not even very aware of them unless we make them explicit. But oftentimes we are acting as though these stories are true. These stories are oftentimes based on our history because our brains are always predicting what's going to happen next based on our experiences in the past. And they're often unconscious, like we don't even know that they're happening, but then we are acting from the place of these stories versus maybe the accurate truth of what is going on. And this is tricky because our brains are wired to do this. We're wired for story. We're wired to make meaning. We're wired to try to understand and to make predictions. But left unchecked, these stories can really run our lives and our emotions and even cause a lot of problems in our relationships. So I thought I would share some examples of this, both from my life and also just from other experiences and people that I've come into contact with to highlight what I mean. So about a year ago, I had to move out of my old office, and I was sent an email over a weekend saying that they were not going to renew my lease. I was subletting from some other therapists that I wasn't particularly close to, didn't know very well. And it was a little bit different. Like historically, if something like that happens, it's usually a conversation. So it felt a little unclear. But what was problematic wasn't what happened. What was problematic for me was that I created a narrative in my head about what it meant that they were, kind of handling it this way and that they were asking someone else to move into my office. And I got my feelings hurt. I got bent out of shape about it, but it was really based on this narrative or story that I had, which was something about making it way more personal than I think it actually was. And as a result, I had a lot of internal angst about this situation. I had to still office there for, I don't know, like a couple months or something. And it was just really uncomfortable. And I did finally talk to them and kind of got some more clarity. But in the meantime, I had a lot of like kind of hard, I don't know, internal experience around it just because I had always had like really, really positive interactions with my workplaces and, places where I had leased from before. So it just felt complicated, but it felt complicated because of the story that I was making up about it. Let me give you another example. We oftentimes have narratives or stories that we make up interpersonally, like in our relationships, that cause us problems or conflict. So an example for me is early on in my relationship with my husband. He is much more introverted than I am. I am much more extroverted. I also, shocker, love to talk and love to connect and love to, share stories. And my husband needs a lot more just like downtime. And I think before we had really good communication around this, my feelings would get hurt because the story I was making up is like he didn't want to hang out with me or like I wasn't as important to him. And so we had to work through that. And so a lot of times in our relationship, the things that are causing us problems are things that are, really not grounded in the truth, but it's grounded in a narrative that we've told ourselves about what is happening. And so, on that same note, that has actually sort of been passed down. And one of my kids also really needs a lot more downtime and a lot more quiet time. And so, again, the story I could make up is that like they don't want to talk to me or they are not wanting to share anything with me or I'm not important to them or something along those lines. When the truth is that that child also just needs a lot more downtime. They need a lot more introverted time. They need more quiet time to themselves. And they get easily overstimulated. And so I share these different examples because many times the narratives we have, while they totally make sense, they are problematic. And so one of our jobs then is to examine, like, what are the stories that I am making up, or what is the story I'm making up about this, and what is the story I'm telling myself about this? So excited to tell you about the sponsor for today's show, Realty IT. They specialize in websites for real estate, but they are also able to design a custom website for any industry. They just created a new custom website for me that I absolutely love. You can check it out at jenalley.com. To learn more, visit RealtyIT, that's RealtyIT.com, and fill out a contact form to get started on creating your dream website. I will link Realty IT as well as my own new website in the show notes so you can check it out. Now back to the show. I'm also thinking right now about people who struggle with anxiety. And, many of us at different times are prone to anxiety, but many times, again, it is not based on what's happening in front of us. It's about the story in our head about what's going to happen or what could happen. Or, what we're feeling paranoid about or, an interaction that we're nervous about. So I just think that naming the story that we're making up or the story that we're telling ourselves can be so helpful to get really clear on that, like, what's actually driving my upset right now? Is it the actual event or is it the narrative that I've attached to the thing that's happening right now? So let's go ahead and work through an example that you might be having. What's something that you are currently experiencing anxiety around or that you're upset about or that you're having conflict with someone else about? Maybe someone didn't text you back and you're upset because the story that you're making up is that they don't care or they're sick of you or they're, not wanting to connect or be in relationship with you. when that could be, but many times there's another possible story. So a helpful next step is to think about, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself? And then what are other possible stories that could be going on here? Might they be having a bad day? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're just super busy. Maybe their kid, in my case, had the phone and then they didn't see that it come through. And then it wasn't, a new text anymore. So they just missed it. But again, we make up these things that aren't actually about us. And that's true. We tend to center ourselves in other people's experiences, but the truth is people have a lot going on. And so even kind of small things that happen, we can really personalize. And sometimes there really is conflict, of course, and we really do have a problem with something. But even in that case, it can be helpful to then turn to that person and say, the story I'm making up is this, in order to get clarity. So let's just imagine that the story that you thought of or the situation that you thought of right now that you're going through involves another person. Do you need to go to that person to share the story that you're making up in order to get clarity? And can you think of a time where you were mistaken about someone's intentions or, what was going on just because there was a story in your head about it? So I want you to think about something that you're currently experiencing anxiety about, or you're currently upset about, or feeling hurt by. And now I want you to notice, what is the story I'm telling myself about it? What's the story that I'm making up? And what happens inside of you when you notice that that's a story, that might not actually be the truth? And maybe it's hard to imagine that it's actually your story versus the truth. And now I want you to think, are there possible other outcomes or other narratives or other stories? Are there other possibilities of what could be going on in that situation besides the story you have in your head? And then finally, I want you to notice, is there anyone else, maybe the person you're in conflict with, maybe someone else that you need to share that story that you're making up in order to get clarity? In other words, if the thing you're thinking about is about conflict or fight or something like that, do you need to go to that other person and say, hey, I'm feeling hurt. The reason why is because the story I'm making up is that, fill in the blank. And you get to see, what is their reaction? What is their response? Because that is owning our side of the thing. That's owning that this is the story instead of being accusing, you're being jealous or you're not caring about me or you're being selfish. Instead, we're owning that this is my story that I'm making up. The story that I'm making up is that you don't want me to go to this. Or the story that I'm making up is that you don't care about my feelings because I've asked you not to do that before. So again, we're owning our part in it in order to get clarity and in order to hopefully initiate some sort of understanding and even repair. So I hope you found something helpful today. I am going to walk you through a handout. I'm going to link the handout in the show notes, but if you want a more detailed explanation, I'm going to do a short reel that I will be posting that you can either access via my email. So if you sign up for the email or in the Mental Health Coach podcast community. So again, those links will be in the show notes. So as a reminder, please look at the show notes today to join the Facebook community and also become an insider to receive mental health tips delivered straight to your inbox. As always, I would love it if you would write a written review in Apple Podcasts if you have not yet done that, because this helps other listeners like you join our community. Thanks so very much for listening. I will look forward to being back here with you next Wednesday.